Hey guys, VaulSC here. Hope that you're having a good week. So today I'm going to be completing an entire faction review, breakdown, strategy, and everything for the operations subsection of the SSS, that almighty sectorial of the Aleph Infinity faction. We're going to go through the units, the profiles. You know the drill by now. You know how it works. So, we're in N4 now. During N3, OSS came out then, towards the later half of the edition. And in N4, obviously, there have been some changes. But most of the changes that I've seen that really affect this sectorial have been improvements. And although overall, all Infinity, considered, I think Combined Army are my favorite faction. OSS is the faction that I've been playing the most and have been studying the most in N4, which is really saying something. So that's why I've chosen them as the focus for today, and that's why we'll now go through the profiles, because I feel like this faction, I have more to give than for the other factions. I've playtested them more and I've studied them more, and I can give you more insights into their rules. So stick with me if you'd like to learn more about winning with this wonderful faction. Alrighty, in fact, one of the first things we'll go into, because I know that newer players really like it, when we do this, is just to jump onto TTS really quick and just give you a visualization of some of the models that you probably ought to purchase, or at least I would recommend that you purchase if you are starting out and you want to be a successful OSS player. Maybe you've just finished watching this review and you're re-watching it and you're thinking, damn, I could play this game and paint these models and beat up on my friends with VaulSC's advice, but I've just got to get some models. If you're playing with us on TTS, we have a wonderful range of Aleph models for you to already use, but of course you're going to be purchasing some models in real life at some point. So here is my recommendation about the essentials. Number one, Corvus Belli have just come out with this new Operation Cold Front package, where you basically just get the miniatures from Operation Cold Front plus the Aleph models from the Beyond Cold Front box set. And they are pictured here, except for the Yadu Trooper, which isn't in our 3D collection just yet. I'm going to add her very shortly. But if you buy that box, you'll get these models plus the Yadu Trooper. So you've got a few dakinis. These are going to be essential. They're going to be a major focus of the talk that I'm giving today. Comes with a Deva. This can be used as other troopers, but still a Deva is relevant in this edition. The Naga Sniper looks really good if you use it as a proxy post-human sniper as well, but the Naga Sniper is a legit profile. Better than that, though, you can use it to count as a Naga Forward Observer or Killer Hacker, which are even more popular. Comes with the Shukra Consultant, and this guy's an absolute staple in this sectorial. You'll be wanting to use him, which is one of the reasons why this box set is so helpful. The Apsaras, in some ways, has received a buff. We'll talk about it in a bit more detail in this review, but the ability to give one of the dakinis Ballistic Skill 13 and then stack the marksmanship on top of it is a pretty big deal. The Rudra's received a bunch of buffs. I didn't use it at all the last edition, but now it's actually a very, very useful unit. Shakti's in there. Shakti, I'm still not a fan of her, but you may want to use her just for the sake of it because you like the model, or you may want to use her to represent some other more relevant profile such as Parvati, or just count her as a CSU, or do whatever you want with her. Another box set that you will need is the Lamed Rebot set. These guys will come with a bunch of weapon loadouts, allowing you to turn one of them into a total reaction HMG bot or a missile launcher. Both of those profiles are excellent, by the way. The sensor bot, but most commonly the Lamed Flash Pulse bot. And when you've got two of them in your collection, a lot of the time you'll just be running them as Flash Pulse bots, but you can also run one as a missile bot, one as a Flash bot, or one as a missile bot, one as a TR bot. If you have cash to burn and you want to get two sets of these guys, that would not be a mistake in the least. Like, if you've got 4 of these models, you convert 2 of them into Flash Pulse guys, 1 into an HMG guy, 1 into a missile bot, and you are set. Those guys are going to get used game after game after game after game. They're going to provide so much value, so you need these in your Aleph collection. Similarly, and for similar reasons, these other two bigger bots, although we don't have newer sculpts for them yet, you may have to content yourself with the old school versions. I wouldn't even, object to somebody buying the Silhouette 4 emotes from another faction if they happen to be newer and better sculpts, and just simply painting them as Aleph bots. That's fine. But you still need these guys because the 8-point repeater is still relevant. If you take a Danavas or Danavas, you can replenish pictures for it from example, but the Evo hacker is just very powerful if you are using the HMG Dakini or the Sniper Dakini, which you will be, and it also can buff the Rudra as well, so you want those guys. Next up, the box set that contains this model here, the Deva Spitfire, and the special weapons per se. Dakinis looking like this. You buy one box, you get these 4 models here. You will need this box unless you're willing to do accounts as and say, this is my HMG guy, this is my sniper guy, or whatever. Because you will be playing a Dakini Link team if you're an OSS player. Trust me, you will be playing a Dakini Link team. If not at some point, it will be basically every game. So having the models that actually represent these very nicely and are very wonderful sculpts, it's just a no-brainer. This is a must-buy if you really want to be a dedicated OSS collector. And then finally, the only other mandatory box, in my opinion, is the one with the posthumans. If you buy that box set, you will actually get 2 of these guys here, the Proxy Mark IV. It's just that in the TTS simulation I'm doing right now, I'm only showing you the rocket launcher guy, which I prefer, but this box set will come with a 4th model holding an HMG. And posthumans are going to be in all of your lists as well. I've demonstrated 3 here, which I use quite commonly. The Mark V with double SMGs, it's a wonderful specialist, very cheap and very resilient. The Mark II Sniper, again, very optimized for what it does. This guy, a really solid roadblock if you've got extra SWCs in your list. And beyond that, obviously there's the rest of the collection, but my recommendation is having this kind of setup is the core as the starter kit for you collecting a big, powerful 300-point army, and then you can sprinkle in the flavor as you like. Maybe you want to get Dart or a Daz-U, or maybe you want to get Andromeda, and these are optional purchases. Maybe you want a Marut in there. I don't know. We'll talk about the merit of those models in this video, but you cannot go wrong with any of the choices that I've outlined here. Even the Cold Front set, if you don't particularly like Shakti, you can use her to represent something else very easily, such as a CSU or a Daz-U or a posthuman, because she's quite flexible that way. Cool, but I hope you join me now in the evaluation of these profiles throughout the faction. We'll go through and we'll tell you what's hot and what's not, and give you some strategy tips about how to do well with OSS. Hopefully this video doesn't take forever. I've got my wine here to keep me going. But we'll just go through it, starting with the light infantry. Alright, so if you play vanilla Aleph, the Deva makes a useful lieutenant, but in OSS you're going to be wanting to use the Shukra consultant 100% of the time, unless for some reason you want a Marut in your list to be the lieutenant instead. As a basic cheerleader just hanging around doing a little bit of shooting with the combi rifle, the Deva is not particularly well costed just for a random guy that is going to be trying to do some arrows or fighting. That's not what the Deva is for. The best use of a Deva in OSS is to join a Dakini TACBot Link team, because note the most important new rule, it's a wild card. In the previous edition of this game, the Deva was not a wild card. It was very restricted in what link teams it could join, but now it is. So you have 4 very cheap Dakinis, or maybe 3 Dakinis and a CSU, and then add in your Deva. And the most popular model to pop into your link team is this guy right here, the Multispectral Visor Level 2. Note that conveniently the box set that you'll be getting comes with that model. As you can see here, it's holding a nice handy Spitfire right there. So, yeah, if you're going to be taking a Deva, it's most likely going to be that profile. There's not a lot of MSV2 in this faction unless you're committing to the Marut, and that's a relatively big commitment. So you can get your MSV2 in there. The Dakinis themselves at long range are going to be much better at shooting down enemy ARO pieces, but once you get into the midfield, this Deva, can shred pretty well. BS15 if you include the link bonus, 5 dice on a Spitfire, MSV2 ignoring all those mods. Obviously shooting through any smoke grenades that your opponents land. As for the other guys, you got the Sensor Deva, the Killer Hacker, the Regular Hacker. If possible, you want to try and keep your hackers in marker state, in your posthumans and your Nagas, that kind of thing, your Dazus. The sensor option is not bad. Also, if you're not going to commit to the Spitfire, putting the sensor on your link team can be useful, because if the Dakinis are way out in the midfield, they may not be able to discover some of the markers they want to, and they may not want to run into mines and things. So having the Deva there to reveal stuff, unlike the Unidrons, they don't have +3 to discover, but you're allowing yourself to traverse the midfield more easily with this model. I have never used it personally, but I did want to give it some credit. I want to sort of show merit where it's there, and I think that the Sensor Deva is the other option. Now, the other thing about Devas is that they can join Harris link teams. I don't run very many Harris options in this sectorial, but I know some of you guys like to. If you really want to commit to something like a Rudra with some sort of Yadu Trooper or Shakti, a Deva joining that link team's not bad, because you're able to cheapen the overall effectiveness of the team while still providing the other two members that might be doing more of the fighting with that small +1 burst link team bonus. So that's my general view. Yes, in a vacuum, there's nothing wrong with a combi rifle Deva bot profile and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, this game is all about the context, all about the capability of your lists. And the Deva is really there to join the occasional link team, and that's about it, in my opinion. The Sophitect was an amazing unit in N3, and it still is in N4. I'm shocked to tell you that I haven't used the Sophitect even once during N4, and I've played a lot of games now. I think that the Sophitect, personally, is a unit that you should be more interested in if you are playing vanilla Aleph, because you're going to have some games where it's like you've got Achilles with 3 wounds, he's got his AP Spitfire, he's trying to beat some enemy tags and so forth, and gets unlucky, goes unconscious, the Sophitect revives him, that kind of thing, and the Sophitect is still able to go back to your TR bot and your missile bot and your Dakinis and whatnot and repair them as well. But here's the thing, the Sophitect 31 points, there are 2 reasons why it doesn't make it into my OSS lists. Reason number 1, we have this new person called Parvati now, and Parvati, for an extra 7 points, is also a doctor engineer, and she comes with a whole bunch of other benefits that the Sophitect doesn't have. We'll get to her later, but I want you to bear in mind that one of the reasons why the Sophitect isn't as interesting anymore is that it's currently overshadowed by another profile within the faction. But the other reason why I'm not as attracted to the Sophitect for this sectorial, like I will take her for vanilla Aleph, but for OSS, here's the thing. The reason you want something that can revive your unconscious troopers is because there's a lot of variance in this game. You are going to be putting out an ARO trooper who's very good at shooting, but your opponent brings something better and drops it. You regain a lot of value if you bring it back up. And in your active turn, you may get unlucky when you go up against their total reaction bot or whatever, and your attack piece drops to the floor. You need to be able to revive it, because then you're taking like the chance of beating that ARO piece from like 80% to 99.5% if we're doing all these binomial calculations, and we're realizing that, if you just have another shot at it rather than just working out, which of the 2 outcomes is going to happen, if you're just able to, force that reroll all the time, you have the upper hand. But here's the thing, the attack pieces and the defending pieces in this sectorial are usually going to be troopers that have structure value, not wounds. So all you really need is just an engineer. And you have a couple of options for that. You could take Trisha, we'll talk about her later, but more often you'll have the posthuman, or if you're anything like me, you'll almost always just take the Proxy Mark 1 Engineer for 13 points. And that's willpower 15. It's all you need. And even though you're only paying 13 points for it, which is much, much, much cheaper than Parvati and the Sophitic and Trisha, you're still getting a unit with BS13 and NWI and Mimetism, which I just find shocking. I mean, it's even got Armor 2, so it can actually fight crazily enough, still has a Gizmo kit, but all you're really needing out of it is just a Willpower 15 Trooper, which can revive your Dakini TAC-bots, or your Marut, or wherever it's going to be. So that is why I don't take the Sophitic. There are just these other amazing options which sort of overshadow this profile so much. Net rods have received a big buff. So just coming back to the overview about OSS, I said that OSS have, I'm not too sure if I said this directly, but OSS definitely have received some major buffs, and I just want to highlight what they are. So first of all, remotes can go prone now, and in fact have to go prone when they're unconscious. So previously, if you really wanted to invest in that Dakini sniper in a link team, yes, it would be a powerful ARO piece, but as soon as your opponent beats it and it drops unconscious, it will stay there, sticking up above the terrain. Maybe if I can visualize this on TTS. So we've got this guy right here, and I don't have a little wall on my map, but I think this dumpster will do. And we're trying to shoot that Dakini. If it goes unconscious, in N3 it would just stay there and you can continue shooting it until it's knocked off the board. But in N4 it just becomes a base, right? So it's just sitting there behind the dumpster and you can't see it anymore. But then when your engineer comes over here to repair it, it automatically comes out of prone state, and the prone is cancelled and it just pops back up again. This is such an incredible buff to not just Dakinis, but your TR bots and your missile bot and your Rudra, being able to just avoid the possibility of your opponent removing it from the table completely, allowing your post-human engineer or whatever it may be, Parvati, to do the job and revive it. So that's one of the big changes to OSS, which is really, really a big deal and very important. But another one of the changes, I should probably mention the second change, which is post-humans being able to take the max body count on the table above 15, but we'll talk about that later. The other change is to do with net rods, and net rods have always been a staple, even though, for 4 points, they're a bit unreliable with combat jump from N3. You always took them in N3 because the possibility of having a cheap order that only costs 4 points and having an order every turn for that was just so lucrative in terms of the value you were getting out of it. You'd always take them. So what Corvus Belli have done is they've made it so that now, with some new changes, net rods are still an auto-include, but they've become better and they don't cost anymore, which I find kind of crazy. This model probably ought to cost 6 points, if I'm to be fair. At least 5. I think 6 is fair. And one of the reasons is that combat jump isn't as random anymore. If you fail a roll, you can simply place the model on the table edge instead of having it destroyed. So you're guaranteed to have the net rods available to you. And if you're taking first turn, there's no way for your opponent to kill them straight away. You're going to get at least 1 turn's worth of value out of them. So much more reliable. But on top of that, they are line infantry now. They're not deployable equipment. They've got structure 1. So if they drop unconscious, you can actually repair them with your post-human engineer. You could fire a gizmo kit at them, as far as I'm aware. I mean, maybe that's only for remotes. Not 100% sure, but regardless, you can at least use the engineer skill on them if they go unconscious. So that is a huge deal. So I didn't talk about them in terms of the purchase list, but to be honest, I mean, if you're going to get a net rod, these are models that I wouldn't 100% recommend doing this, but you could probably just get like a box of matchsticks and like make some on like an empty base. But anyway, these are obtainable from a box set which includes the Sophitic and a couple of Yud bots and 3 of these, which you may as well buy, even though they're probably going to resculpt them at some point. You may as well get that because you're always going to use the net rods. It comes with the Sophitic model, which you might use sometimes, but can be, you could just count that as your proxy engineer if you want to and just run it. And the Yud bots themselves are going to be very, very useful. So, yes, the net rods are essential. Then we come to the post-humans, which have often been regarded as, top 5 most broken units in the game, most powerful, most valued. N4 hasn't really done much to change that. They're still extremely good. The main nerf this edition they've received is the Proxy Mark II, which is the probably the most powerful and most sought after proxy, is now not hidden deployment, so you've got to put it on the table as a marker at the start of the game. Having said that though, posthumans are still really undercosted, overstatted, and we're now in an environment where everybody has to cap themselves out at 15 units on the table, and in your OSS list you're going to have 14 units plus a posthuman who has 3 bodies, so you're essentially going to be showing up to your games with 17 guys in a lot of your lists, which is really, really powerful. So the Proxy Mark I, I used to always take the Hacker, but that was back in N3 when the Hacker provided assisted fire. Nowadays I take the Probot with the Evo repeater. The Engineer is my go-to choice. The Proxy, the Doctor is something you might take if Parvati's in your link team. She's doing the engineering, and you want to hang your Proxy out next to your posthuman Mark IV with rocket launcher. But for me, most often it's going to be the Engineer. Just 13 points, but you've got a Willpower 15 Engineer that can also fight. Seems crazy to me. The Proxy Mark II, both of these profiles are very, 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 very good. I used to only take the Sniper because of hidden deployment and because I, had other models in the midfield like Dazyus and Nagas, but now they're both very good choices, and I do take the Hacker a lot. So the Hacker now is a bit more powerful because hacking is a lot more relevant. Your opponents will be taking more stuff that is hackable. There's Spotlight in the game now, which is quite powerful, and boarding shotguns work differently. So you've got this Mimetism -6 guy who's very resilient because of NWI. And, your opponent comes around a corner to discover it or whatever, and you can just fire at the template from a boarding shotgun as a direct template weapon, which is very, very strong. Having said that, the Proxy Mark II, nothing to sneeze at. You've got BS-13, which is, one of the better sniper accuracies in the game. 28 points, still dirt cheap for a sniper that can do that with Mimetism -6, and it's got NWI, so it's almost like having something which is the equivalent of Armand Lemuet, but for, 2/3 of the cost is what we're saying there, which I find quite shocking. So if your Dazu sniper in the link team wasn't enough already, having this other powerful sniper there is also really, really good. I think I would take the Hacker just a little bit more often than the sniper, but the sniper's still very strong. The Proxy Mark III, I think Axel used him in a game against me recently. The AP Spitfire, quite relevant now because the AP is very, very useful in this environment where we take a lot more tags and heavy infantry because of the new crit mechanic. It's just got 2 wounds straight up, which is really nice. But the other profiles for the posthuman are just so attractive. It's hard for me to take him. It's a bit of a hard sell. Not because he's bad, just because the other proxies are so damn good. Proxy Mark IV, I love the rocket launcher because at just 21 points, if you've got the SWCs to spare, and this guy realistically is usually only in my lists if I have excess SWCs. He's not one of the first things I put in. He's one of the last things I put in for luxury. But for 21 points, you're having this additional ARO guy, Armor 5 in cover. The new crit mechanic means that sometimes he just survives a crit with Armor 8 effectively. He can fight close range with an SMG Nanopulsar as well. You can even use him active turn some of the time if your opponent just leaves something straight in front of him, moves up, SMGs them with BS-13, or rockets them with a Burst 2 rocket turn. But it's really his resilience to points cost ratio which makes this guy amazing. And he's out there, threatening them with a rocket launcher. They come and blow him up with the tag, whatever. And you don't lose an order because of it. And that's sometimes a problem with playing a very ARO-heavy game where you set up a lot of things in your deployment zone. And yep, this might get a crit, this might get a crit, this might slow him down some orders. But after your opponent spent turn 1 killing everything that can see the deployment zone, if you're down like 4 or 5 orders from that, that can be kind of crippling. But with the proxies doing the work for you, like multi-sniper rocket launcher, it pops back around to your turn. You're fresh sitting there with 15 orders plus a bonus one for Strategos from your Shukra, and you're just laughing all the way to the bank. Proxy Mark 5 is my other one. Yes, the Mark 12 has triangulator fire. It's all cool and everything, but nobody ever takes that profile because the SMG +1 burst, flash pulse, EM grenades for 5 less points, and it's a specialist. Come on, guys. This is the only Mark 5 that we would want. So this guy, I really love it. It's got forward deployment, so it's almost like an infiltrating specialist. It's very tough, very good at surviving the midfield, slowing them down, making them pay. Again, you're putting something in the way. It's a roadblock, but you don't lose the order until all of your proxy bodies are gone. So these 4 profiles here, the Mark II, in fact, we'll put the hacker in there just while we're considering it. If you're playing a tight list with a Marut, for example, I'd only take 2 proxies. But most other lists, I'm going to try and get 3 proxy bodies in there because they're just so cost effective. And my loadouts, sometimes I would take this one. If I'm running Parvati, I would back myself up with these guys, the Mark II, 4, and 5. But if I've got the engineer in there, I would normally take the engineer, the rocket launcher, the engineer, the Mark II, and the forward observer, and I'd drop the rocket launcher in favor of having more guns, like a TR bot, for example. Or if I've got a lot of Nagas and Dazyus, I would drop the forward observer and have the midfielders do their thing. So posthumans, probably in the top 5, top 10 best things in Infinity, and that hasn't changed in this new edition. CSUs are relevant for 2 reasons. Number 1, they are a cheap chealer and quite cost effective, but number 2, they can join a Dakini fire team, and you are almost always going to be running the Dakinis in that fire team. So an 11-point CSU, we notice that there is no Dakini that is cheaper than 13 points. And when you're investing in 3 or 4 Dakinis, generally you're purchasing all of the Dakini profiles that you want, rather than just throwing in an additional one for 13 points. You could throw in a CSU for 11 points, and hey, you've got another specialist. You've got a model with a light shotgun and a nanopulser, so it's got, well, not a nanopulser in this profile, but the light shotgun is like a nanopulser in that it's got a direct template weapon. What I'm trying to say here is that the CSU gives your link team something it didn't otherwise have, makes the link team a little bit cheaper. And sometimes you actually make a roll with the metachemistry, which is relevant. Like, you pay 11 points for a guy, and 11 points, it's reasonably costed. In fact, you know, it's probably worth more than 11 points, and you've paid that. And then on top of that, you get, like, NWI, or Dogged, or extra speed. Yeah, it's a really good unit. Some players even like to take these guys outside of the Dakini Link team. I don't, just because, you know, if you're playing the cheerleader role, you're going to be wanting to take the net rods, the Lamed rebots, flash pulse bot, and the pro bots. That's how I'd get my cheap cheerleaders into the list. But at 11 points, the CSU is cheap enough to be considered a cheerleader. So, fantastic unit. By the way, willpower 12, not the best. If you're planning on doing a lot of button pressing with your Dakini Link team, you might want to lead them with like a Deva or what's-her-face, Parvati. If not, maybe your Dazyus and Nagas are out there doing the specialist work. Cool. On to some bounty hunters. So Father Lucian Sforza, he's not really a OSS kind of model. He's available to a lot of different factions, and where I see this guy coming in handy is if you're going to tournaments and there's this one player at the tournament who always just plays Shazvasti and always runs the Specular Killer and always tries to kill your lieutenant, and you're playing game after game after game with your Shukra consultant, and he's always getting killed by some, you know, impersonator. One thing you can try is running Father Lucian Sforza as a Shukra consultant and having 2 identical Shukras on opposite sides of the deployment zone and deterring your opponent from taking that 50-50 coin flip for trying to sort of kill the lieutenant. But there may be some other clever ways of disguising this guy, pretending that he's an Apsara or one of the posthumans or something like that. Most of the time it's better just to leave him at home, though, because he can't join a full-on link team. He can only duo with a bounty hunter, which is not really worth it. And 26, 28 points, this is such a cost-effective faction. I mean, you're going to find so many other models for that amount of points, which are just way, way better. Similarly with bounty hunters, yes, the 12-point bounty hunter is very good, and if you're ever going to be taking a bounty hunter in OSS, it will be this profile. It's the cheapest profile, it has the most useful guns, and because of booty, you have a good chance of adding one of the guns on this list anyway without actually paying for that gun. Whereas if you get yourself a sniper rifle and you roll up an additional sniper rifle, it's not particularly helpful, is it? Whereas this one, it's just hands down the best because it's the cheapest and the guns are most useful, and you don't have to put yourself in the position of having that redundancy. All in all, though, I mean, at 12 points, that's almost as much as a Dakini, and generally that's the bracket where you're going to be investing in Dakinis. Anything cheaper than that, you'll need a flash pulse bot, and anything more expensive than that, then we're talking about like Nagas and stuff that can actually fight and do a lot better than a bounty hunter actually can, which is why you don't really take them. Alright, so Andromeda. Far and away, my favorite profile here is this one, the 33.1, which comes with an SMG Zapper, flash pulse decharges, and has infiltration +6. Andromeda is a lot different from what she was in the previous edition because of the way that Guard works. Guard basically allows you to use your close combat ability as if it was like a pistol. You can shoot somebody from 8 inches away, and I remember Polynikes going on Facebook and saying, guys, isn't it true that if you short skill up with your Andromeda and somebody else is able to ARO but they're not in base contact, don't they have to dodge or shoot you? They can't declare a close combat attack back at you unless you first declare one against them. And, it sounded a little bit cheesy, but the consensus from that rules debate, and in fact I think IJW popped in there, was that no, your opponent can't do anything. You basically prompt them to use their ARO. They can't attack you in close combat, and then you melee them. So what that means is that if you've got Mushashi 6 inches away, or Shinobu, or the Uberfall Commando guys, which are very good in close combat, they can't stop you from doing that trick. So they can dodge, but you're going to then hit them with CC21, Martial Arts level 3, so they're -3 and you're +3, and then they're taking a double action hit. It's quite abusive if you can get Andromeda up there. A couple of reasons why I'm a bit skeptical about her. Number one, to get the most out of her, you'd like to be alpha striking. You'd like to have the first turn, deploy very close to them, move her up, and start picking them off one by one. What if you don't have first turn, though? Are you going to infiltrate her anyway next to enemy lines? They'll have the chance to get the jump on her and kill her. And if you're not going to put her next to enemy lines, how are you going to get the value out of her if she's just sitting back near your deployment zone? That's my major issue with her. A lot of you guys will find ways around that. That's fine. I think she's a good unit now. She definitely has a lot of potential. I'm hearing about some games where she goes like a wrecking ball rampage through people, but remember, people go on social media and they brag about the times where their unit does really well. You don't hear somebody go into the forums or Facebook or Discord or YouTube and saying, damn, I keep using Andromeda and she's just been sucking, and like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong because I like her and I just keep playing her and nothing happens. You occasionally hear posts like that, but just not nearly as often as you hear the people who are going, yep, no, I just murdered my opponent and they gave up after one round because I killed everything. So yeah, if you're going to play Andromeda, my recommendation is this third profile here, SMG, with infiltration, and just be prepared to, study up a bit and have a plan. She needs some thinking behind her. You need to know whether you're definitely going to try for first turn no matter what, and are you going to risk the infiltration roll or just start, at infiltration distance? Or are you going to keep her back as a counter-attack piece that can move into the midfield and pick things off once the dust has settled a little bit? That's up to you. I won't be playing her in the majority of my games, but unlike some of these profiles, I'm not always going to leave her at home either. I am definitely going to play Andromeda some of the time. War Cause or War Cause, fit it into the list if you've got 3 points spare and you don't want to buy a Yud bot. Nothing too much to say about War Cause in this context. The Danavas hackers. These are really popular. I see that people really like the Danavas, so we better investigate, because I've never put one in my list before, ever. It has a picture, And I wish this model could go on a link team because OSS hacking can be really powerful, but they're a bit light on the pitches. They do have the flashball spots to run up, but that's a bit of a different kind of tactic. The Danavas can move into the midfield, land the pitcher on a roll of a 14, and then start hacking them up good. +1 burst on the Oblivion is nice. Oblivion can be brutal. It can be game-winning. It can be ruthless. You hit somebody like Joan of Arc or any lieutenant with that's vulnerable to Oblivions, and that can be just tectonic shift right there. 22 points though. I mean. Yeah, I think it comes down to your meta and your play style and whether you put a lot of stock in stuff like white noise and the other various abilities of a hacker like this. My personal preference is to stick to the basic hacking in Marker State, like on my Nagas and my Dasyus. The Danavas is a little bit vulnerable to somebody, like Laxmi or what's her name? There's the other mercenary hacker that works for a bunch of the NA2 sectorials. Anyway, you guys know the one I'm talking about. Got the pitcher, fires it across the table, lands it within 8 inches of your Danavas, then a killer hacker just knocks her out, and you've lost your Danavas for pretty much nothing. So you got to be careful. I'm not going to come out and say that Danavas is bad though. It's not a bad unit. I mean, 22 points is not that much. Willpower 15, BTS 3 is very, very good for hacking. The pitcher is legitimately useful. And +1 burst on Oblivion is meaningful. Like that's actually not nothing. It's not peanuts. That's actually a thing. But again, my recommendation is, especially for new players, study up on the rules a bit, study up about how hacking works, and think about your game plan. How many orders can you realistically afford to dump into her? And how useful is she going to be in the reactive turn? Think about those things, and if you're coming up with a positive expected value answer to that and thinking, yep, I know that I can make this unit work, then sure. I mean, she's a good profile and reasonably costed for that. Shukra Consultants, a staple. It looks like I've been disconnected from my server, so I'll not use TTS anymore, but this guy is in every OSS list that I make, unless there's a Marut, and you know what? I actually even run them when I run the Marut, because the Marut can be destroyed, and in that case I take the chain of command boarding shotgun so that the lieutenant can shift over to the Shukra when that happens, and I'm combining chain of command and counterintelligence into one model. And then of course if the Shukra is the lieutenant, you are paying 24 points and you're merging two things: counterintelligence, which is a very useful ability, and Strategos, which basically, Strategos is an ability that is worth almost like 10 points. Basically, it's something where you're effectively getting 2 cheerleaders for the cost of 1. So you're paying 24 points. Imagine that you're fielding 2 models that cost 12 points, but it's a bit more than that, because you can have an order pool which goes up to 11 orders, like it's expanded, and you get more threat range out of your Rambo piece moving down the table. On top of that, this guy's not just a complete sideline cheerleader that can't fight at all. You're still getting a multi-rifle and a nanopulsar, so very well equipped. BS-12 is fine. Armor 1 BTS-3 is better than nothing. And the biometric visor discover bonus. I mean, I really wouldn't want to put this guy in the way of like a Fide or a Specular Killer in case it just gets shot. But if you are moving from one side of the deployment zone to the other, and your opponent's just got that impersonator there, maybe it re-impersonated after doing some killing, you have a much better chance of revealing it with a Shukra than you do with any other model in your army. So that's a very situational ability. It won't come up in very many games at all. But the point is that this guy is just packed full of potential value, and the fact that it's Strategos level 1 and counterintelligence in the same package really makes this guy well worth it. I'm just going to look up the rules for Strategos, because I believe there is a trick, there is a tip that I can impart here. Okay. So deploy 2 troopers to set aside instead of the usual one. That used to be something that you could only get from Strategos 2 in the previous edition. Don't forget that now your Shukra has this ability tucked in, which means that for this model that you were going to be taking anyway, amazingly you get another bit of value, another bonus out of them, in the form of being able to keep 2 reserve troopers back. So in a lot of games what I do is I keep the Shukra himself in reserve, especially if I'm going to be going second and my opponent might be hunting him down with a Fide or a Specular Killer. And then the other reserve trooper is basically the posthuman, because you actually got 3 bodies there. So you know your opponent deploys their entire army, and you've deployed your entire army. Then after you've seen the deployments of both, you bring out 4 more models out of your army case, and you've got a Shukra, you've got an engineer, a posthuman hacker, a posthuman rocket launcher or whatever, and you're spreading them out to exactly where they need to be, which is a beautiful benefit for OSS, and not one to be taken lightly either in tournament games. That's the kind of thing which could give you a big edge. So don't forget that, guys. Now, the Apsaras. I've seen the Killer Hacker being used, but the only profile I'd really consider is the Rem Driver. And at 22 points, it is expensive. This is not really cheap enough to be considered a cheerleader. The real question is this. Do you want one of your Dakinis to go from BS11 to BS13? Is it going to be doing enough shooting to make that bonus worth it? And, you know, yes, the CC15 and the Willpower 14 is something. You know, that's not nothing, but this really is mostly about the BS value. And sometimes, for me, the answer is actually yes. It's actually yes. And that's because there are a couple of situations which crop up a lot, and I want to maximize my chance of actually profiting from them. So one situation is where you have your Dakini with a multi-sniper in your link team, and you're just sitting there flat in front of the entire table, and you're behind a wall. And your opponent pulls out their best attack piece. They get their Zuyong HMG in a link team, or they get their Kriza Borax, or they get their Salamander tag or whatever, and they're just shooting directly at that Dakini. So you're starting out at Ballistic Skill 11, +3 for the link, +3 range, -3 cover, all that kind of thing. You apply the mods. And your opponent might not even beat that Dakini because it's just so well stacked with the mods. If you've already put Assisted Fire on that Dakini, it's ignoring cover. But if you've got BS13 because it's using the Apsaras BS13, you're basically getting it up to a point where you're applying the -3 mod to your opponent for mimetism in a lot of cases, and you're shooting back on 19s because you're at BS13, +3 for range, +3 for a link team, and you're ignoring their cover. They may not have any other mods, and 19s on 2 dice with double action is going to cause them a lot of pain. Second situation, it's your active turn, and you've got 8 or 9 orders to spend, and they've put a tag watching the entire table. It's sitting on a big tower, and it's like a Yotum, and you're trying to crack it in, you know, the number of orders you've got left, and you cannot afford to leave it unconscious and like unconscious level 2 state, because your opponent just revives it with an engineer very easily with rerolls. So you have to crack it completely. If you've got a Dazu sniper again, you're shooting with armor piercing rounds, so that Yotum is now armor 5 +3 from cover. That's 8. It's got a beta 15. It's rolling 8 pluses on every armor save. And if you're shooting from 40 inches away, it's -3 to hit from range, -3 for cover, -3 for mimetism. So it's going to miss a whole hell of a lot of the time. If it does hit you with the explosive round, you drop unconscious. That's the beauty of the Dakini, and revive it and have another go at it. But the important thing is you've got to make it fail enough saves during that turn to make this play worth it. So you need it to fail effectively, 5 armor saves to be able to remove it completely, or is it 6? 3 to make it unconscious, 1 to make it unconscious again, 5th one to remove it. And the difference between having BS13 and BS11, over that number of dice rolls, you're shooting it 3 times per order. If you're sinking 10 orders into that, that's 30 dice rolls. You're scooping up all those 18s and 19s that would otherwise be misses, and putting that into the pile of dice your opponent's using to make armor saves. So that can be one compelling reason to include an Apsara if you're likely to be in that situation. And thirdly, you may want to just use the Rem driver on the HMG Dakini and just be spraying around it at BS19 instead with 5 dice, cleaning up smaller models, or it may even go on your TR bot, for, goodness sake. It could be going on your Rudra gun bot. There are a lot of really good targets for this, and that's why the Apsaras, I think, is a serious consideration. But again, it may be overkill. You may not need that +2 ballista skill, and if you're willing to go without, saving 22 points is also a really big deal. Parvati. Some people on social media really just love this model to bits and think it's just like the best model in the game. I don't think it's quite that good, but she's still very, very good. I'm not going to be trashing this model or talking it down. Parvati is very, very effective. And it's about backup, it's about consistency, it's about utility. She's all about the utility. She can and actually does fight, and plays the support role at the same time. So even though you're paying 38 points, which is quite hefty, you are fulfilling a bunch of roles which you would otherwise have to invest points in elsewhere to do. If you've got a Yud bot, you're covering a lot of the deployment zone. You might even be able to have her support a total reaction bot and a post-human heavy rocket launcher. And you could have her join the Dakini Link team, and late game you can move out, press buttons with her with Willpower 15. That's way better than getting the paramedic Dakini or the CSU to do it. Whip 15 is way better than that. But importantly, when your Dakinis get shot down, and ultimately they will in some of your games, you're reviving your Dakini on a roll of an 18 because you used Engineer +3, which I find quite shocking. It means that you are really going to be able to save a lot of command tokens. You can then use the command tokens for reforming a link team, which is a much more effective use for them. And she is just really paying dividend after dividend over a long period of time. Looking at her equipment, SMG +1 burst, so she's got 2 SMGs basically. Burst 5 in the link team, BS 12, +3 for the link. Very grindy up close. Flash Pulse, again, Willpower 15, so that's pretty amazing. Gizmo Kit, Medikit, that's pretty standard, but again, putting her in the link team gives her a better chance of hitting the downed target with those things. So if you can imagine playing a list where you've got your Mark II rocket launcher over there and your Dakini sniper nearby to Parvati, she can stand up, she can fire a mid kit this way, a gizmo kit that way, in another order, separate order that is. And so many more opportunities are possible because of her. She even has Super Jump, which is a weak ability nowadays, but still relevant some of the time when you're rushing your Dakini link team across the table, there's some pleb hiding on a rooftop. Parvati jumps 2 inches up in the air and she's movement 6, so she jumps 3 inches up in the air, 3 inches down again in a parabola, and just sprays them with BS 15 +3 for range, 5 dice, half armor from AP, and you're really glad that you take her. I often struggle to choose between her and the Rudra because my favorite Rudra profile is the same points, the K1 marksman rifle. So if you do end your list and you have 38 points to spare, it's either going to be Parvati or the Rudra. The Rudra we'll talk about later. There's a lot of reasons to take him. But with Parvati, another benefit is that she removes the need for you to invest in a Sophotect or Trisha or your Proxy engineer or doctor, allowing you to take a different proxy option. You don't need the Proxy Mark 1 on your list. You free up a slot. So you can take the Mark II, Mark IV, and Mark V proxies, which is very efficient when combined with Parvati. So, guys, no kidding. She is very, 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 very good. Sometimes I don't take her because I want to save the points. I want a cheap as chips Dakini Link team. I want the Proxy Engineer, and I want to invest in some cool stuff like Nagas and Dazyus and like Dart or Andromeda, and I need to free up some points. And those would be the reasons why not to take her. But if you don't have something else that you're trying to invest in, Parvati is very, very good, very strong. Moving on to Trisha in 3-3. So she is a bit similar to the Sophotect in the sense that, you're usually going to be wanting to take either Parvati or the Proxy Engineer. She can wildcard into the link teams as well, and there is an argument to be made that if you can't afford Parvati, but you do have enough points for Trisha, and you do want to use your Proxy, you know, Mark 5 instead of a Proxy Mark 1 for some reason, you don't want to invest in a Sophitect, Trisha is actually kind of relevant, and I can see an argument for playing her. She hangs out with your Dakinis, revives them when they get knocked down. She doesn't do fighting that well with just a Breaker Combi Rifle BS-12, but with the support of the Link team, you can sometimes see it. I mean, usually the Dakinis, with their mimetism, are going to be better at it. Good in close combat, actually, which the Dakinis certainly aren't. But when I say good, I mean like very, very average. Dogged is something that Dakinis don't have. But again, just a bit of a hard sell. It's not a problem with her profile, not a problem with her abilities or equipment or her points cost. All of those check out. They're fine. It's just the fact that you're trying to compile the list with the best capability. That's usually going to be done by including Parvati or just your basic Proxy Mark 1. And that's the light infantry. Cheers, guys. We'll talk about the 3 medium infantry guys. I'll have less nice things to say about some of these ones, but that's me. Okay. As you guys know, there are now other people on the internet doing faction reviews for Infinity. I'm not the only person that makes these reviews. There are even, I think, 1 or 2 people who have copied my format, basically of just having, you know, Streamlabs showing the showing Army 6 and a webcam and just talking their way through it. One thing I can tell you, though, is that one thing that other people tend not to do, that I still do with my sectorial reviews, is that I will tell you when a unit is not worth taking, and we need to beat them down. And that's unfortunately what I'm going to be doing with Shakti and the Yadu Trooper. It's not just because I'm really salty and like vehement and so forth. I actually want these units to be good because I love their models. But you know, this is a game about capability and about context. And sadly, the Dakini Link team, which I just continue to talk about over and over and over and over again, is just so powerful and so optimized. I mean, the Dakini Link team is probably the best fire team core in the game if you go points for points. Not in terms of overall capability, but in terms of how cheap they are versus how effective they are. They're probably right up there next to the Fusiliers and Kamau, for example. That, you know, you're building your lists around that. You're going, how can I best support this Dakini fire team? Yadu Troopers are expensive medium infantry models that, you know, really the only thing going for them is that they can form these little link teams. Yes, you might have a Yadu Harris plus a Dakini link team. Why not both? But I feel that the best lists that you can make typically, you know, don't go there, because you're wanting to get to 15 units, and you want one of those units to be a post-human with 3 proxies. And it's just that much harder to do when you're trying to wedge these expensive Yadus into your list. So let's just go through and break it down. This is a 6.2 model, great speed, BS-13, love it. Physical 12, I mean, the stats are just fantastic, you know, great stats. Then their abilities can be a Harris, can be a core, awesome. Immunity to shock, fantastic. NWI, so basically a big heavy infantry trooper. Mid-30s points costs, fine. I mean, you know, you look at Zuyongs and so forth, you're getting a similar kind of deal. NCO HMG, brilliant. You know, you're spending a lieutenant's order instead of, you know, on the lieutenant. The Emirat's fantastic. I mean, what more? In a vacuum, these guys are just great. You know, if you saw this profile available to you in, like, Invincible Army, the Yuching Sectorial, and, like, they were like, do you want to add 1 Yadu Trooper to your core of Zuyongs? You'd be like, fuck yeah, you know, just chuck the hacker in there, or the heavy machine gun, or whatever it is. Have some Emirats going around with your multi-rifle. But in OSS, I just can't see it happening, because they bloat out the overall list too much. The NCO HMG is probably my favorite profile here because of the efficiency of it. But here's the problem. Your lieutenant has Strategos, so you're adding the lieutenant's order to your order pool anyway, making the NCO ability redundant. The real value of the NCO Yadu here is if you're going to combine him with an Asura and have a Harris team with 1 Asura, 1 Yadu with a heavy machine gun, and then either a second Yadu or Shakti or a Deva. You could put Trisha in there if you wanted to. You could put Dene Rudra. There's a lot of mix and match max options. But look, in competitive N4, they're just too expensive. And the sad thing is that, you know, you're living in the context of, you know, this big ocean where you're this fish swimming through the waters, and then there's these giant sharks. You've got Combined Army with Avatar, Norkius lists, that kind of thing. You've got Nomads with their Ubervol Commandos and their Puppet Bots and their Morans and their Jazz and Billies. And then you've got Varuna with their Cutter and their Kamau and their Fusiliers and Jammers and Helots. And you're competing in that environment. You don't really want to be bringing a knife to a gunfight. And if you're spending your huge chunk of points on an Asura and Yadus, Shakti, that kind of thing, and not being able to afford Nagas, and not being able to afford proxies, not being able to afford, you know, a TR bot or something really useful, then I'm sorry, you're just not going to have as competitive a list as the guys who are optimizing their lists. Like, there's no other way. You guys don't strike me as an audience that would like it if I was just sugarcoating it to you. So I'm not going to do that. Yadus, although they are a good unit at face value, they don't bring enough value to OSS, in my opinion. Again, you could make a fire team core out of them. You could have 3 Yadus, you have your rocket launcher, your heavy machine gun, Shakti's in there with a killer hacker and Imorat and blah blah blah, and number 2, and you're taking a Rudra gunbot and it's looking really cool, fantastic thematic list. Just too expensive. Just way, way, way too expensive. So, again, my apologies to everybody who's been offended by this negative review of Yadus, but just going to tell you how it is. Just going to call it like I see it. The Arjuna, on another hand, we are now flipping the script, going to a positive note, because I actually think that this is a relevant unit and actually quite a good unit. And the reason for that is that you can take a Arjuna with 2 of these Kiran bot guys. The Arjuna guy by himself, just the mimetism, 1 wound, really average at shooting kind of guy, doesn't interest me, because the shooting at mid-range is going to be done by your Dakinis, or by your Dazu or Dart or something like that. This guy is not really about the shooting. You may as well give him a shock marksman rifle just so that he can do it. In fact, my favorite profile is this one here, the 4th from the bottom, with the 2 Quran bots, shock marksman rifle, there it is, like there. The real value of this guy is that he has these 2 extra helper guys who are extremely dangerous to your opponent, and they have to be removed before your opponent can come any further. And this helps you to protect the fragility of your line, of your side of the table. So you're moving up, you're planting these really annoying and very potentially dangerous cyber mines, and then you're camping, you're going prone behind things with Emirates. Again, these guys are remotes, just like everything else in this sectorial. They can go prone. Dodge +3 is actually really, really handy. And you're just swamping the midfield or somewhere near your deployment zone with this little group. And it's helping you to bust over that, you know, that cap of 15 bodies on the table with the extra 2 Quran bots. I think this guy's really, really good. You just sort of have to build the list around him. Usually what I do is I have the proxies in there. I have all of the net rods and flash bots and the Shukra and the Dakini Link team, and then I'll work out whether I'm rounding out the list with Parvati or building it around the Arjuna or the Rudra, because they're all around that mid-30s points value kind of range. So yeah, give him a go. He's very good for defending. I love him for a mission like Supremacy or something where you need to move into the midfield and take an area and then stop your opponent from regaining ground. That's where he really shines in my view. The Asuras. So an Asura has just it's become better. It's so much better than it was in N3, and yet some things never change. It's still not a particularly good choice. It's still not a particularly viable choice for Infinity, and it saddens me to say that. I wish the Asura was really, really good. It's just too much of an investment. There are just too many other better ways of getting the job done that you would need to get done with this model. MSV3 has not been buffed in N4. The armor, yes, it's better because of the new crit mechanic, but still armor 5, there are a lot of ways around that. She's still going to be failing some saves against all the big HMGs in this game. The profile that I think is probably the most interesting one to me, it's got to be one of these ones, the Lieutenant +1 order. You are definitely going to be comboing the Asura with that Yadu HMG, so you're sort of locked into taking 2 overcosted units if you're taking this strategy. But if you're going to try, guys, if you're going to try and make this viable, my recommendation is, take the Asura, take either the Spitfire here or the multi-rifle Hacker. I personally, I think the Hacker's pretty cool because the Trinity on Whip 15 and the fact you're going to be moving up the midfield anyway to be hacking people, that's the one I'd go with. The multi-rifle is also very, very useful for its armor-piercing trait. But yeah, move up the midfield with 1 Asura multi-rifle nanopulsar lieutenant. Have a what do you call those freaking things? A Yadu HMG NCO, so that you can spend the lieutenant orders on the team and move the Asura up that way. And have a cheap Deva in there as well to bring the points cost down. You could even consider Trisha, just in case your Asura gets isolated or immobilized or something by a nasty glue gun, right? But it's too many points for all of that. I mean, for a similar kind of points, you can be taking Dart and a Dazu and an Arjuna unit and having models which trade more effectively, that don't lose you the game if somehow your team gets cut off and, one Oniwaban just mows them all down in close combat or something like that, which, it's a possibility. Imagine your opponent just, laughing all the way to the bank when you just move in and you're sort of trying to get around the repeater network of the Nomads, and then having left your Asura out in the midfield, one 20-point squad of furballs, Uberfall commandos, just drops a couple of Eclipse grenades and just walks in and just shreds your Asura, shreds your Yadu Trooper, shreds your Deva. I mean, that kind of thing can happen so easily, but with your Dakinis, they're sitting way at the back. With your Nagas, Dart, going back into market state, trading at least with them with the nanopulsar and not losing too many points. Seriously, guys, some things never change. Everything we learned about the Asura last edition still kind of applies in this edition, I'm so sorry to say. Alright, remotes. Obviously, there are the boring, non-faction specific remotes, which we'll talk about anyway. The sensor bot, this is going to be in some lists. The OSS version has Climbing Plus, which is a really nice little pickup. But otherwise, nothing too faction-specific to say about it. The Garuda, not bad. Drop troopers are better now, because if you fail the roll and you, rather than dispersing somewhere, you can just come back to your deployment zone and keep it safe. So that allows you to get a little bit more utility out of it. Let's say you take the Spitfire version. It's a shame they took away the HMG version, actually, but if you take the Spitfire version, try and drop down behind enemy lines and you fail the roll, well, at the very least you can deploy it in your deployment zone, put assisted fire on it, and then start moving it up the board, which it could do quite quickly because it's speed 6.4. So it's still cheap, it's still effective, it still does what it says in the tin. I don't run these guys a whole lot just because there are other things that I want to take that I find more reliable. I want to really squeeze the maximum out of every Naga that I can take and every other little bit of utility in the list, and sometimes I can't afford these guys. But there's nothing wrong with them. These guys are especially good in a mission like Firefight, where it gives you a bonus to dropping in with airborne deployment, or parachutist. But more so allowing you to deploy in the enemy's deployment zone. So watch out for that mission specifically. Dakini attack bots, I have been talking about them through the entire review, and I've pretty much already reviewed them. What more can we really say about them? The link team that I specifically take is this. I take 1 multi-sniper, 1 HMG, 2 combi rifles, and 1 CSU. Unless I'm taking Parvati, in which case I drop 1 combi rifle, and Parvati's in there. And then it's basically CSU tacked onto that, and you've got the 5-man link team. Or, in some cases, the Rudra Gunbot swapping in instead of Parvati. There we call it a day. These guys, super, super cheap. The Mimetism, invaluable in a link team. It's just incredibly powerful. The ability to put assisted fire on them to ignore enemy cover with a Probot, very easy to do. You just got the Probot hanging out in Group 2, Dakini's in Group 1. Assisted fire goes on. Assisted fire, by the way, doesn't drop off anymore like it used to. It actually just stays there for the entire game. Even if your guy goes unconscious, you revive him, he's still got assisted fire, at least as far as I know. Just tell me if that's incorrect, but I believe that's the case. The combi rifle grenade launcher I wouldn't recommend just because it's been debuffed a little bit. You can't get the +3 bonus from the range band on it anymore, so it's a bit less accurate and still kind of pricey. But yeah, Dakinis, I mean, 6-4 speed, so much better than Unidrons, and the Unidrons are amazing. So Dakinis, probably my pick for #1 Fireteam core in Infinity of the Game, period. There, I said it. Not by a long shot. I mean, there are some which are right up there next to it. I mean, you've got the Bolt Marksman Sniper, the Grenza Marksman Sniper, the Kamau Sniper, all of these units going in very cheap link teams. I prefer the Dakinis, myself, just personally. Zayn rebots the classic TR bot. The only thing I'll say about this guy is that he comes with Climbing Plus, so slightly more useful. A TR bot is a TR bot, as long as you know how to use it correctly. Very, very good. In some ways, they're even better now because once they get hit, they drop prone. Your opponent can't continue shooting the corpse, the wreckage of it. Then you repair it. So if you've got a very effective engineer on your list, maybe Parvati. Parvati can be reviving your Flash Pulse bots and your TR bot and your Dakinis. Especially if you actually chose not to put Parvati in the link team. Like if you come back here, go for 4 Dakinis plus the CSU. Parvati not even in the link, just so that she can have 2 helping Yud bots going out there and just covering off, with her included, 3 spots of the deployment zone, so that you're constantly being annoying and reviving your net rods and your Flash Pulse bot and your TR bot. That can be extremely oppressive to an opponent that's not ready for it. Samek Rebot is the missile launcher. Don't forget that this missile launcher can even be used in the link team. If you're playing a heavy hacking game and you're going for that Danavas hacker, and you're going for Naga hackers and Dazus and that kind of thing, you'll want a missile launcher just in case you spotlight them, because you can blow them up with a guided missile launcher fire. But if you're going to take the Samek, it may as well be hanging out in the Dakini link team, because later in the game you could put assisted fire on it. You could use it as an ARO piece. It saves you having to take a Dakini, so you can downgrade your Dakini to something cheaper like a Netrod or a Probot, and then you're just slotting in your Rebot in there. Or you're taking your 5-man link team, the Rebot is the 6th model, and you just sub that in once something dies. So easy as that. They're very, very cheap. Really like myself a Samek Rebot. I'd have to check the rules, but it might even be true that the Apsara with the REM driver, making it BS13, obviously you'd be able to stack the guided on top of that, surely, because using your own ballistic skill. I'm just not too sure if the REM driver counts as a mod, but yeah, maybe you're hitting on a 19. Anyway, difference between 18 and 19, not huge, but I thought I'd just raise that small point. Flash Pulse spots, nothing more to say about them. They're extremely good, very cheap, wonderful deterrent. And only tip from me here is just remember to put one of them in range of your Dakini TacBot team, so that you have a repeater for when you use your Evo bot to put assisted fire onto your Dakini Sniper or HMG. Probot, so this is where you get your Evo from, a 15-point guide. This will go into almost all of your OSS lists. Don't forget that it comes with baggage, so if you are for some reason using disposable ammunition on a bounty hunter or the Danavas picture, for example, you can reload it with the Evo. Don't bother with the total reaction guy, but sometimes you will want to take a second Probot and make it the 8-point baggage spot for missions where baggage can be useful, but also just because it's an 8-point cheerleader. Yudbots, extending the range of Parvati and her repairing. Lovely stuff. Rudras Gunbot. Okay, so this guy kind of was very lackluster last edition. Now he is very, very interesting indeed, and that's because the K1 Marksman Rifle completely cuts through the armor of any enemy trooper, and in the current environment, now that we're seeing bigger and heavier duty stuff on ARO duty, having a K1 Marksman Rifle is pretty good. Just got to remember that you've got to get this guy into range to be able to use it, like 24 inches away without, being blown up. You're bringing a repeater along with your link team, so if you want to do some hacking at the same time, great. But he also provides a repeater for you putting assisted fire into your dakinis and swapping that around. So if your Rudra and team are on the other side of the table and you realize, damn, I've been using assisted fire on my Rudras, I need to switch that to my multi-sniper guy, you can do that because they've brought their own repeater with them in the form of this guy. The resilience of him being the point man of the link team, armor 4, structure 2, really nice for tanking some hits, making him a bit more survivable, a bit more amenable to getting unlucky with an occasional crit. As you're retreating, you're laying some mines in your path with the mine dispenser. That actually crops up. It even comes with a heavy pistol for close range. Just a really interesting bot. The paw print, so to speak, of the Silhouette 4 can be annoying, but at least he can go prone with it. 6'4" speed, you're keeping up with the pace of the dakinis as well. And Climbing Plus allows you to get into some positions to shoot at some enemy encampments in ways that the dakinis can't. A lot of buildings have like a couple of levels. Imagine racing across there. You've got first turn, you've got counterintelligence, so they can only strip one order away from you. Strategos, so you've got an additional order anyway. You're just racing across the field with 6'4" speed. Maybe you don't have a CSU in the team. And once you've spent like a few orders and you're already on the other side of the table, your Rudras is just climbing up on top and firing at them from all sorts of unexpected angles because of that Climbing Plus ability. You know, burst 5 with the K1 marksman rifle, or even burst 6 with the Red Fury if you're so inclined to take that profile. You know, even moving the Rudras in range of enemy hackers behind walls and hacking them to death with, you know, a Naga killer hacker in the backfield. There are a lot of really cool moves you can do with them, open to a lot of potential. The reason why I don't always run them is because a lot of the time you're just going to use your link team for brute force, long range punch, and you don't want to commit them to moving out. And if you're not going to be moving out, the Rudras isn't really worth it just hanging back in your deployment zone in my view. So that's where it's better to have something else instead. And that 38 points could be spent on Andromeda or Dart or something which can go out on its own without having to lug the rest of the team with it, right? DASUs, don't use them all the time, but I find this model to be very well optimized. It's not the most popular model in the game. I really do like it though. For me, it's really just going to be the Killer Hacker or the Forward Observer. You can take the regular hacker as well. That makes a nasty surprise if your opponent you know, moves through with a heavy infantry model or a tag, and then you spring out of hidden deployment from infiltration and hit them with a total control or an oblivion. That can be game-ending if you get it right, but it's just very situational. For me, the DASU is all about fighting in the midfield and just outclassing opponents. BS-12's a surprise attack, NWI, Mimetism -6. Even though you've just got a combi rifle, you're out shooting a lot of enemies and clearing up enemy infiltrators and just getting the arm wrestle going your way in the midfield. Fizz 13 for dodging is huge. You know, the kit there, not many midfielders come with a nanopulsar. That's very rare. The DASU allows you to bring that along. I think that's huge. The Killer Hacker DASU has the boarding shotgun instead, which is actually kind of crazy, because when you're forcing them to choose between dodging or taking a BS-12, +6 shot to the face, that can be nasty. Enemy hackers have to choose between like reset or hacking you back or taking the boarding shotgun to their face as well. Just don't take the multi-sniper guy because the Mark II post-human does that a lot cheaper and effectively with a better profile even than this DASU, so don't go there. But if you want to invest in a Killer Hacker, Forward Observer, or regular hacker, that can be amazing. I think the times when you want to go with this guy instead of Parvati or instead of a Rudra, for example, or Dart, is those missions where you need a good midfield specialist and maybe you need to do a lot of classifiers. Like if you're playing counterintelligence or something like that, or if you're playing a mission where you want to spring out of hidden deployment and punch a button, the DASU is your robot for that. It's really efficient. And I mean, a lot of enemy troopers like Spectres and Crocmen, pay high 20s, low 30s for the abilities the DASU has. And the DASU, just for a few extra points, adds NWI on top of that, allowing you to just outfight them. You can tank at least one chain rifle before going down. I think is really, really solid. Of course, most of the time you won't have the points for a DASUS, so you'll be taking a Naga instead. Naga's still a little bit more expensive than your Foxtrots and your Guilang Fort Observers and whatnot, but having a midfielder with Whip 14, Camo State, Infiltration, Specialist, that trio of abilities, the holy trinity of Infinity, basically, and giving it Dogged as well, with Whip Power 14, means that this is always going to be a useful unit. So let's look at it. Fort Observer Naga, probably my favorite, right up there with the Killer Hacker. The Mine Layer, also excellent if you want to play a very defensive game, you want to keep your soft underbelly of Dakinis and Net Rods safe. You've got Naga Mine Layers in the midfield to slow the enemy down, have those speed bumps out there. At least one Naga Killer Hack is not a bad idea, because if you're not going to be running Shakti or anything else that does a lot of hacking, if you're not taking that Asura, being able to eliminate enemy hackers who would otherwise be able to shut down your Dakinis and all of your remotes, very, very useful. Then, of course, the basic Naga Hacker. You've got so many repeaters. You've got so many midfield opportunities to try and spotlight something. The Naga regular Hacker is definitely the way to go if you are going to be running that Semak Rebot missile launcher. Great combo there. So, really, guys, I can't give you any guidance further than that about which of these profiles to go. I love these bottom four. The top three, not so much. The multi-sniper's okay. The monofilament mines, a lot of people sing their praises, but no, I just don't think that's worth it. Myself, personally, I just think your opponent's going to find too many ways of working around that kind of play, but these specialist profiles in the Mine Layer profile are it. They are very, very useful indeed. Bringing me to the last profile we'll talk about, and by no means the least, we have Dart. So Dart allows you to take a piece which almost always is going to be used for going and harassing the enemy and taking up some time during the early game, generally making more of an annoyance of herself and doing more damage than is really being traded if your opponent eventually gets the better of her. If you move out and you kill 3 cheerleaders and it costs some 3 orders getting her back, she's done a reasonable job. But she's the kind of model that can use a combination of her resilience and her ability to dodge and slip through cracks to get to a point where you can either shoot the enemy lieutenant in the face with a submachine gun, or you're firing at a tag in the back with AP, or you're lobbing an EM grenade over a wall, or you're just setting up mines with the other profile. And then when your opponent's trying to get back at her, she's just dodging so easily, fending off shots. She might be in suppression fire with her SMG. The tactical bow arrow can't be ignored very easily with its damage potential. Very, very strong unit. This is a model that I'd sort of prefer in Killio missions, where you're sort of trying to crunch the enemy order count so much. For missions where it's more about button pressing, for the points that you're investing here, I think the DASU is more useful in the midfield if you're going to be doing a combination of fighting at mid-range and getting the objectives done. That's where the DASU is a bit more useful in my books. But a lot of the time, Dart's going to be the way to go. You could compare her role to the role that Andromeda would otherwise play, but the difference with Dart is that she's got Marcus State. She can walk across the battlefield without being hit by a lot of these annoying things, which are going to be, a trap for Andromeda. If Andromeda's stuck on a table where there's not much terrain and she can't really move out from behind cover without being shot at by this flash pulse and that sniper and whatnot. Dart, on the other hand, is moving across there, never going to get shot at by a Nocta or anything because she's in Marcus State. And she gets into position, climbing plus included, to start just gunning things down at close range without dying, and then ensconcing herself in some crack somewhere, going back into Mark State, and just forcing your opponent to flush her out when they've got a whole lot of other things that they need to get done. So definitely a solid 8 out of 10, 8.5, maybe even a 9 for Dart. And there we have it, guys. I'm glad that I had so much good stuff to say about this sectorial. I'm sorry that I offended the few of you who like Asuras and Yadus, but seriously, for me, VaulSC, to get through an entire sectorial and only sort of downplaying like 2 or 3 units, this has got to be a good sectorial, right? So if you like the models, they come highly recommended from me. I think you guys are going to have fun playing these guys. They are definitely a top tier faction for N4. I've had a blast playing them. I've had heaps of games with them, and I'm not getting sick of them. Did I forget to talk about the Marut? Holy crap, I've just skipped over the Marut. Alright, okay. One more unit. Do you take a Marut or not? You actually do. So I almost imagine me uploading this video to YouTube and then like there not being a Marut thing there. I run the Marut a lot. In fact, let me show you my Marut list. The Marut has had two major buffs. Number one, it's cheaper. Number two, the crit mechanic has changed, allowing it to survive flash pulses and HMGs a lot better. I run the Marut in Group 1, 2 net rods, Dakini team, and the Shukra. Please note that I only have 9 things in Group 1. This is a trick that you run when you have Strategos level 2, which the Marut actually does have. Strategos level 2 says, during the tactical phase of the active turn, you can move a trooper to a different combat group without spending a command token. So this means that when you're playing your Marut, you can have a look at the board and physically work out whether Group 1 is going to be doing the heavy lifting this turn, or whether you're going to need an extra order in Group 2, and then decide whether you're going to move something from Group 2 to Group 1 for free, or just leave it there. So there may be some games where you're thinking, damn, that Proxy Mark 5 Forward Observer's got a great opportunity to walk up the board and lob an EM grenade over the wall and have it hit Joan of Arc and like the Jotun that she's standing next to. I'm going to move an order from Group 1 to Group 2 for free and have a 7 order run with that Mark 5 if we presume that we're converting the Warcores regular order into a regular order with a command token. But then there's going to be some other games where we like, right, my opponent is just dead in the water. If I charge the Marut over there, shoot a couple of camo markers on the way, and then spot that Ghulam lieutenant from behind the wall and just blast it. But to get there, I've got to discover a few markers and clear out a few ARO pieces. So I'm going to go, right, Marut in the same group as the Shukra, chain of commands there, counterintelligence is there. I've got the tactical awareness order from the Marut, but I'm going to move the Warcore from Group 1 to Group 2, meaning that if I'm like come to the end of that turn and I've got to put the Marut in suppression fire or hide it somewhere, very important things you may need to do, you've got that additional order to be able to spend. So Strategos is amazing there for the Marut, but just coming back to him, having a big Armor 8 tag there with the new crit mechanic means that you can survive a lot more. Usually the tactic for taking down a tag is going to be something like throw a smoke grenade and then bring up the MSV2 HMG and start shooting at it. Doesn't work with the Marut because of its MSV2 sort of negating that tactic, which is very, very useful. Just watch out for white noise because that can get the job done against it. Not many tags have both a heavy flamethrower and a nanopulsar, so if you're up against these weird units that are like Armor 1 BTS 6, your heavy flamethrower is really handy. But then if you're up against these, Ariadna guys with Armor 4 BTS 0, then the nanopulse is extremely handy. So I find that's really, really, really useful. Gizmo Kit Phys 13, I mean, Parvati, if she's not nearby to it, she could still shoot that Gizmo Kit long range with the Dakini Link team helping her. In my list, it's the post-human that's going to be doing that, the engineer. But you can sort of see all the opportunities for this guy. Check out my YouTube channel. I very recently posted a bat rep of me playing this list up against Hot Fresh Tofu's Ariadna. And although I had a lot of good luck that game, and although my opponent made some mistakes, you can sort of see the potential of the Marut basically just wiping the enemy army off the board, even though it's an Ariadna army with half of them camo tokens. Didn't matter, Marut still just pulverized them and managed to survive at the end of the game thanks to a Gizmo Kit reviving it. Spoiler alert, by the way. But damn, this model is just what the Doctor ordered against something like a Kamau sniper and a link team, because you're negating that tool of the Kamau, taking away its mimetism. It's shooting back at you at BS 16, but if it's firing double action rounds, you're going to be sitting there armor 11. So blocking its hits on you isn't going to be hard, and you can revive yourself very effortlessly. But your shots are hitting him BS 15, damage 15 plus 1 for being the tag. HMG, you're going to be able to knock it down quite handily, and there are not that many things in the game that can just so comfortably deal with ARO pieces like that. I mean, this thing just eats Noctifers for breakfast. There are very few ARO strongholds that are going to shut this guy down. Again, watch out for albedos and white noise, but if they're showing up with that stuff, that's when you bring in the Dakinis. Assisted fire onto the Dakini HMG, move that up. Shoot that on 17s on 5 dice and shred it that way. So just the gunpowder, the brutality of these big robots, just really love it. So this is a faction which will reward you for playing skillfully. As you get better and better at the game, the faction's going to give you more. Understanding position and setting things up to help each other and support each other in terms of where things are placed and anticipating enemy attacks. When it comes to your turn, if your opponent's just a low-level Infinity player, as many of your friends may be, and just setting up arrow pieces, nothing steamrolls, flash pulse bots and warcores and lone snipers like Lemuet and Nauf and guys like that. Nothing steamrolls that stuff like a Marut or a squad of Dakinis with assisted fire, HMG, sniper rifles. It's just no contest. So enjoy OSS, guys. I certainly have been. That's all I've got for you today, and thanks for sticking with me through such a long video. Really appreciate you guys as always.